Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Raina Mo's Designs. And today we're going to make an easy bread recipe, a rye sandwich bread recipe. So if this interests you, please continue to watch. And also, if you're new here, consider subscribing. We would greatly appreciate it and love to have you join our community. Now, let's get into the video. Everyone, and welcome to Raina Mo's. Notice I didn't say designs because we're in my kitchen. So today we're going to be making some homemade bread, homemade rye bread. And the reason for that is because we are changing things this year. We're going healthy without making huge cuts. We're also learning how to be self-sustainable. So if this sounds like a video that would interest you, better keep watching. Okay, so like I mentioned in the intro, we're trying to be self-sustainable this year. In 2023, this is going to be our year of success. Success in a lot of different ways. Success mostly in the form of having happy, healthy families and leading happy, healthy lifestyles. And part of that is being able to fend for yourself and do the things for yourself. And a basic staple of every home is bread. We're always going to the grocery store and buying it, but it's so easy for us to make. So I'm gonna teach you how to make a whole grain bread. Notice I didn't say whole wheat, but a whole grain bread because we're gonna be using rye flour along with all-purpose flour, organic, but all-purpose flour. And the reason for that is it's gonna be really hard when you're used to using store-bought bread for your family to just transition from a white loaf. So this way they can actually get the health benefits of a whole grain and really not miss the taste or the non-existence of taste in a bread. So like I said, I'm going to be using rye flour. I'm going to be using organic all-purpose flour. And you're gonna need a tea towel, which I'll link all of these things below. Remember, you don't have to use the links, but if you do, you're helping out the channel. So you're gonna need a tea towel. You're gonna need a scale. I know I've mentioned this before, that it's okay if you don't have one, use what you have. But when you're getting to the habit of baking bread, you really need a scale. And they are really cheap on Amazon, so there's really no excuse for a wife, a home cook, a husband that likes and knows his way around the kitchen and likes to cook and bake. There's no reason for you not to have one, so get one, especially when you need a little bit of help with losing weight. You can do portion controls the appropriate way with it. So go ahead and invest in a kitchen scale. And you're gonna need a bread pan. Now this is called a Pullman pan. This, when you see the finished loaf, you'll say, wow, that looks exactly like Mrs. B's, or I can't say the full name, or the magnificent loaf with all the colorful dots on it. It's gonna look like that type of bread, and you're making it at home. And that's because of this particular type of loaf pan. Do you have to have a Pullman loaf pan? No, you don't. You can use any bread pan that you have, but I'm gonna be using the Pullman pan, okay? And of course, you're gonna need salt, you're gonna need warm water, you're gonna need yeast, a pinch of sugar, and a little bit of olive oil. And I use a very good quality olive oil when I'm baking bread because that helps lend to the flavor of the bread as well as the salt. So gather all your ingredients together, guys and girls, and come on, let's start baking. Okay, everyone, so here's my scale, and I'm gonna start by turning it on and tearing it out. Tare, T-A-R-E, what that means is zeroing it out. So I'm placing my bowl on the scale. It's gonna show how much it weighs in grams. I just pushed the button to tear it out, so it's now at a 0. So now I'm adding my flour. You're gonna need 430 grams of flour. I'm only putting 400 grams of the all-purpose flour in the bowl. And the reason for that is because the 30 grams that is left over is going to be my rye flour. The reason that I'm only using 30 grams of rye flour is there may be a hard time converting your family over if its taste is too strong and the family doesn't like it. So this way you can slowly but surely wean them into a healthier lifestyle with a whole grain bread. So next you're going to see me go ahead and tear the scale again, re-add my bowl, and I'm going to begin to put my salt in. I'll explain to you why I put the salt in and I mixed it up a little bit later in the video. But after you add your salt, which I believe it's 9 grams of salt, but I will publish this recipe so you guys will get to see it. Now I'm going to add the olive oil. I use a really good, flavorful, great quality olive oil in the bread recipe because that adds flavor, guys. Besides moisture and keeping it soft, it adds flavor. So the next thing you'll see is me adding the yeast into a separate cup that I also tear because I'll be using 7 grams of yeast and 7 grams of sugar because that's going to feed the yeast. This is called blooming your yeast. When I use about 45 grams of warm water with my yeast set aside from all of the rest of the water and the flour, because you want to check and see if your yeast is still alive and see if it's working. And I think I'll explain that a little bit further in the video, but that's basically what you see me doing here, adding the sugar, adding the yeast, adding a little bit of the warm water, and then I'll set that to the side for about 3 to 5 minutes. Hey guys, I just noticed that you may not have been able to get everything that I shot. You might not have saw it, but anyway, I'm praying that you did. So I wanted to show you just how foamy and frothy the yeast gets when it's truly an active yeast once you activate it. See all that nice, beautiful foam? That lets me know 2 things: that my yeast is alive, and it gives me an idea of how well it's gonna raise my bread. So now I'm gonna pour this into my bowl, and then I'm gonna go ahead and add the rest of the 245 grams of water. So this is 44/45 grams of water with the yeast in it, okay? Now, I've already added the salt into this flour, so I am going to add my yeast last, okay? Why? Because salt will kill the yeast. So I'm gonna pour the 200 grams of water into my bowl. All right, that's 201. And now I'm gonna be adding my yeast. And I want to get all of this, okay? I've got my spoonula, and I'm gonna scrape every little bit of this yeast out into my bowl because we're gonna need every bit of this to raise our bread. And then I'm gonna start stirring this all together. If you have a KitchenAid, this is the time to pull it out with the dough hook. I have one, but I do not know where my dough hook is, so I do it by hand. But also it's very cathartic blending it by hand, so you're gonna see me do that now. So here you see me just taking a wooden spoon and going ham on this bread recipe with the flour, the water, the olive oil, and all the ingredients. This is the time where you can use a wooden spoon, or if you have a Dutch whisk, which I'll link it down below. This is where you would use that to help bring your dough ball together. Now, you'll notice that I scraped down all of the sides. I'm showing you my hands because I'm gonna wash them very well because I'm gonna use my hands to finish working this dough ball. I'm gonna grab this red rubber mat that I found on Amazon that I think is absolutely wonderful. It's not necessary, but if you plan on doing any kind of real baking, you're gonna need a silicone mat like this. It has all of the measurements and conversions from what we use here in America to what they have in Europe, like converting cups to grams and what have you. Don't forget to subscribe. But here's the mat that I was just talking about. And I think it's absolutely wonderful. I think it's a kitchen necessity personally. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and add some flour to my mat to keep my dough ball from sticking. And then I'm going to work the dough ball. Keep in mind that while you are kneading your dough ball, you are going to have to do that for at least 8 to 10 minutes, just FYI. So that's a good reason to have a mixer that has the capability of kneading your dough for you, because it is quite a workout. I did sweat behind my neck while I was kneading my dough. And what I want you to do is kind of pay attention to this technique. I'm using the ball of my hand, of my palm, to actually push down as well as extinguish it outwards. So you'll see it's a rolling method where I flip the dough and push down and spread. That's what I'm doing. I'm slowing it down for you guys so you can see the motion. That is what kneading dough looks like. So you're going to do this, like I said, for about 8 to 10 minutes. Be prepared. You'll get muscles making bread. And as you knead the bread, you will notice that the texture of the dough ball changes. The way it looks and feels changes. And you'll feel how it just tightens up, which is the gluten being activated. The gluten is what holds your bread together in the final baking product, and it's also what helps it to keep its shape. And you'll notice that I keep adding flour to my hand, adding a little bit of flour where I'm working the dough ball. That's just to keep it from being sticky. This is not supposed to be a shaggy dough. So if you watched my original sourdough bread recipe, you noticed and learned what a shaggy dough is. This bread is not meant to be a shaggy dough. So you'll just continue to work this dough just like you see me here when it's nice and tight. And I'm just forming that ball so that it can get its first rise. You'll notice that I'll add a little olive oil into the bowl. This is not the same olive oil that I put into the bread. This is just to coat the top to keep it from drying out while I set it aside to rise. So here you see me remove the tea towel and my bread has doubled in size and risen. So I'm just going to flatten it out in preparation to form my dough roll or dough log, because that's what's going to go into the loaf pan. So I just set my loaf pan to the side so I can kind of see how long it is. And I'm just rolling up the dough and going to place it in the pan. I'm going to squish it down a little bit and then set it aside for its second and final rise. Again, I remove the tea towel and show you what it looks like on its second rise, and I'm going to put the lid on that Pullman pan. So here is the little extra convection oven that I have, and I went ahead and I set it at 300 degrees, had it already preheated, and now I'm going to let it bake. Alright guys, so here I'm bringing it to the table so you guys can see. I think I accidentally filmed this portion in slow motion because when I sped it up, it looks very choppy, but you can see the beautiful product that we've created, this wonderful loaf of bread. It's so beautiful, so tasty, so nutritious, and so delicious. Your family's gonna love it. Okay, guys and girls, I hope you are ready for the reveal of this wonderful bread. This is a rye homemade loaf of bread. And you're probably not gonna believe your eyes. Just look how wonderful that looks. And it's all made from scratch, and it's easy. And you can get it done in less than 2 hours. It took about 10 minutes to weigh everything out, 10 minutes to stir things up and knead it, 30 minutes to let it rise, 30 minutes to let it do its second rise in the pan, into the oven for 30 minutes, and you got beautiful whole grain bread. I hope you guys really enjoyed this. I know I did. The smell in the house is just so wonderful. There's nothing like having bread fresh made in your home and coming home from school or from work. Ooh, I don't think they can see
and how fast can that be eaten?
It can be eaten very fast.
Oh.
And it's healthy. Guys, it's healthy.
With healthy butter.
You don't have to feel guilty eating this bread. Does that mean you can eat the whole loaf in one sitting? No.
I know I could. You could put butter on it. You could put mozzarella cheese with a little sauce. And butter has vitamin K. Remember, we're learning.
Yes. Butter, unlike what media would like you to think is bad for you, no, it's those multi-saturated fats, polysaturated fats. Hey,
Just touch it.
it's hot.
I know it's hot. I love it. You're hot too.
Okay, guys. And on that note,
I love my.
I'm gonna try to let this bread cool before we cut it, and I let him have a slice. So anyway, please thumbs up the video and subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. But most importantly, do the things that you know are good for you and your family, and have an absolutely wonderful evening. Bye.
Should have said the bread of life.
This bread is hot.
I should have said this is the bread of life.
Babe, stop. That's okay, I want it to. Now, I'll get some pictures of this cut after it
Forearm
cools.
looks like that bread.
Looks good, doesn't it?